completely cradled down here, so there's no weight on these. All these bolts you can take in and out loose, that way the engine is suspended. Then when we lower the engine, it will distribute its weight evenly on 3 mounts, that way we'll have the minimal vibration. There is a large air gap top and bottom, and this is just a small amount of rubber, very similar to the torque mounts on the Integras and the EGs that would go this way, and they're designed to move up and down, but it allows the engine to go up and bottom out on this to reduce the amount of movement on the engine. We have located a JDM airbox. This is from James. We actually did a ZC manifold for him a while ago. James, thank you so much. So I just sent him the money. He should be shipping that out here in a minute. Now, this is the Teen suspension we bought. This stuff's pretty cheap, and Teen stuff is good. Now, you can buy $300 suspension and you're gonna absolutely hate life after installing it, or you can buy Teen, and this is relatively inexpensive, but it's good stuff. I'll put it on the EG, I'll put it on the TSX, there's a few other cars. This is a piece from our other suspension that we had. It was True Heart, which wasn't very good. This is the piece that was on it. This will fit these springs and fit the top hats. We're using the top hats from the True Heart. In fact, let me go show you real quick. Paint them with this stuff. This stuff works really well, by the way. You got to do 2 or 3 light coats, and then it's best to let them sit in the sun for a good hour or so before you handle them. So the good news is my dad arrives today. This has been a long time in the making. If you've seen the channel before, you see I've talked about it. He tried to get here for Christmas, but he had to have an operation, then he had an infection, it took longer for that to heal, then he had a problem with his eye, and they said, hey, you need to have a cataract operation. They managed to get him in soon, and the way the National Health works over there is you either take their appointment when they give you it, or you could be waiting 4 decades to get in, apparently. My dad exaggerates, kind of like myself. So I just checked the flight tracker. He has arrived. He landed in Orlando, so fingers crossed he'll be at my house by about 7 o'clock. We're going to put a piece in here to box it in, very, very similar to the OEM. Then kind of round everything, round this edge. This is obviously the mount side. This ties it to the top end of the transmission. That goes on there. It welds in. Drill the holes through. We're going to bolt that mount in one more time just to make sure it's right, make sure all the tape lines line up, make sure it hasn't moved. Take this sucker out, start cleaning the engine bay, painting. In fact, let me go get the paint code. I'll go to the paint store right now and get the paint coming. Last year, in fact, the day that the NSX Type S was released, I called my dealership where I bought the orange one from and put down a deposit. And it was one of those things you had to get the deposit in quick. Well, of course, all of the cars sold out in 24 hours. There was only 300 cars allocated to the US. Well, it's kind of bittersweet. I just got information. NSX isn't happening. The good news is I don't have to sell the Porsche, because I was going to have to sell the Porsche and probably everything else to make that happen and finance the rest. So it's kind of good, because I really like the Porsche now. The channel does develop a little bit of money, not a lot. It makes enough for a car payment, not an exotic car payment like a NSX, but maybe something like a Civic Type R car payment. So if you are a dealership, if you are interested in working with me, if you want to sell us an 11th gen Civic Type R MSRP or close to it, let me know. I'd love to give you a bunch of exposure. I'd love to buy one of those cars and do some of the LHT OEM Plus, as it seems to be called now. Basically do our modifications to it and share it on the channel. I'm never a big fan of windshield washers. You know, you keep your car clean, you really don't want to spray anything on the window. So the fact that this is leaking and the hoses are old and they look kind of yucky, I think we're just going to delete those hoses and maybe reroute this wire. Not a big fan of wire tucks, but wire slight rerouting, big thumbs up on that one. So this one, I think we might come along here. There's a nice gap along here that often that wire will fit. Then it leaves this open and clean. This I found is 80 bucks, so I've got one of those coming. Should be here in 2 days. And whenever you disturb the SE system, you should really replace the dryer too, which is here. This actually looks like it's been replaced. The CRX one used to have a little sight glass in here, and basically you could see if the Freon was low, it used to bubble, You see little white bubbles in there, so this is definitely a replacement, but this is kind of like a filter, so I'd recommend replacing that whenever you disturb the AC. It's often easier to stick with the same harness and then just extend it and add plugs as you need. This, we're going to take off the engine and take all the insulation off here, make sure all the wiring is good. Some of these plugs are okay, probably replace that and put a new plug on there, and alternator plug looks good, air temp sensor looks good. Basically go through these and freshen these up. The exhaust right here is off the burr hatch. Now it is sold, and of course it's sold to the furthest place away from Florida as it can get. Well, this is one piece. You see, we made it go right from the cat right to the back section here, and then the axle back is separate. Well, this is going to be insanely expensive. I already quoted him shipping price, and then when I measured it, it came out to be even more. I don't know why. I'm going to cut it here and put a V-bend here. The problem is, without doing this on a car with the engine in and the header strapped on, the chances of this being straight or perfect and the tip coming out straight is 0. So I'm going to cut it here, but to make sure that this in relation to this is exactly the same, I'm going to make a goofy fixture to hold this together, cut that section out, weld in a V-bend, weld the V-bend, take the little fixture off. Hopefully this will be the same. Let me show you. This should keep these two sections in place. Hose clamped here, here, and here, but what we always do is just as an extra, put a little tiny tack, one that can easily be pulled and ground off and sanded, same as here and here. If it was something that you didn't really care too much about, rather than using the clamps, you can put small welds on here, something to grind off, but I don't want too much to grind off. I'm using a MIG, so it's kind of dirty welding. There we go, these ends go together, and because of our little fixture right here, which again, it's just crude, but this is, when you hear people talk about fixtures, obviously if you would make it over and over, you'd make something nicer, but this is the kind of thing you got to build, and this time goes into this, and of course materials. This is just scrap. But now this is quite a bit smaller. That should ship in a box together, and then hopefully the muffler and the header will ship together, but that's just one of those things I figure you'd find interesting. Have a ton of it.
I mean, look at these two, like back in the day, how thick these wires are.
Yeah. This stuff was always overkill. Like the CRX fuel lines are much bigger. Look at the size of the alternator wires. So that's nice. All this wiring looks good under the tape. And this end, it's mainly around the cylinder head that looks like it needs to be.
Yeah, there's a couple in there that are a little rough.
Yeah, that's where all the heat is.
But we're going to be changing the plugs on anyways, so I'll just put a longer piece of wire on it and
yeah, go back into good wire.
Yeah, exactly.
Solve the heat shrink. So the header and muffler are in there. Two of our T-shirt boxes from, obviously, T-shirt Labs. This is the midsection. So they're ready to go. There's a supercharger kit, and there is a manifold. All kinds of stuff going out today. You can't get enough heat in it.
I'm putting a whole 170 into it just to get it started.
We can put S2000 injectors in here and bolt back to the factory location. So it's very stock looking, but we have a bit more fuel ability, which is about 340 cc's as opposed to 240 of the regular GSR injectors. So we're only going all motor, nothing special, but these are just going to be nice OEM injectors, easy, super easy to tune, good gas mileage, good efficiency.
Yeah, if we ever decide to do like a camshaft or anything more later in the future, we've got enough injector already.
You can loom it and take each of the zip ties off as you go, but this is just a perfect way to lay it out. This is one of those things we're so excited to put the motor in. We didn't ask ourselves, hey, is everything else going to fit? And it doesn't. So this is the mount position right here. This is the battery tray, and it sits right on top of that. And as you see, it's a good 3/4 of an inch high. And I really want the battery up front. It has to, in fact, the battery is good up front. So we're going to have to shave this mount a little bit, get a little bit more room here, modify this tray to get enough room there, and one other little secret. You ready? Be out of battery. Miata battery is shorter than a Honda battery, but the same in pretty much all the other dimensions. If you see it right here, it's about half an inch thicker here. Look how much shorter it is. There's our issue fixed right there. This is the resistor box that used to be a big part of your CRX life. If you know the early days, you used to have to ohm out the injectors and find out if they're low impedance, high impedance, whether to use the resistor box or not. It was kind of a pain. This used to sit up in the firewall. Well, this green plug here, these are super easy to bypass. Basically what you're going to do is there is one wire there, the yellow with the black. You're basically going to connect it to all the other ones. You're going to basically connect that to, this is the power, and then each one of those is the power to the injector. So this is basically resisting the power to the injector, hence resistor. So basically chop those off, twist all 5 wires together, solder it, heat shrink, put 14 rolls of tape around it.
We're going to
Bob's your uncle.
resist the use of resisting this.
No more resistance. 4 cans of the paint mixed. This is good stuff. The only negative to this is it doesn't seem like it covers very well. So 4 cans is what I have. Well, to make it easier too, I got some white primer just for the areas that we need to build up. I could use some light gray to cover the black and then go over it with white, because this covers really well. So obviously white primer, this will cover even better. And then this is the good stuff right here, the clear. Now this stuff, I'll show you when I do it. I think what you do is you shake it. You got to read the instructions, of course, which, you know, those guys never do. We only read the instructions when it doesn't work. You shake this for about 3 days, and then you hit that little pin right there and it makes some kind of activation. It mixes the two, and then I think you shake it again. I'll read it and let you know. But I got 4 cans of clear right there. In fact, there's the bill right there. See, 239 bucks. Hopefully you get some ideas. We're working on the engine bay now. George is finishing up the harness right there. I want to start doing the dirty send-in and all that good stuff. We'll get the engine bay prepped. Then we're going to take the pedals out and start on the hydro conversion. That is going to be in episode 4. That's going to be a special episode. If you know why, you'll tune in. Don't forget, hit subscribe.